Good morning. My name is Jon Yazzie. I am from Kayenta, Arizona, and I'm originally from a little place called San Juan, or Coal Mine Canyon near Tuba City. In Tuba City, I was a teacher there, and I ended up taking a school administration job in Kayenta. That was in 2013. I've been there since. Oh, of course, my clans. I am just Kiaani, or near the mountain towering house clan. Growing up, I was taught that our clans, or my clan specifically, the Kiaani clan, is our descendants are from a room near Chaco Canyon called Kayenta. So just put that out there because ancestral Pueblo people are alive and well today, despite what our textbooks say. I'm my dad's clan. I am born for Nana's Treasure Trabon, Zuni Edgewater. Again, that clan is said to come from the Pacific Ocean area. And then my paternal grandfather is Sitnajini, or Blackstreet Forest, and my grandmother's side is Kachiki, or where the red comes together. I think they're referring to some of the rivers. So a lot of our clans come from the areas that we're from, and they have descriptive terms. So my presentation today, who we are, my company, how we got started, and our mission. We have like a 10-fold mission. It used to be one or two things, but now it's 10-fold. And then also a little bit about presentations about, I've been on a few panels for our economic development committees for the Navajo Nation. And one of the things that I'm always trying to talk about or push is how we can use outdoor recreation to rebuild the economy, specifically in Kayenta. If you're familiar with Kayenta, it used to be a coal mining town. And just a little heads up, our background information, when I got there in 2023, the local high school, Monument Valley High School, we had like 980 students, the attendance. And after the coal mine closed and the town kind of dried up, I think this year we had 433 students. So in the span of 8-9 years, we've lost more than 50% of our enrollment. And a lot of that, I think, is parents moving, finding jobs somewhere else. So that's why I talk a lot about how we rebuild the economy using outdoor recreation. And it's going to be specific to the Kayenta area. I can't speak for all of the cities on the reservation, so I'll talk a little bit about how we would do it in our general area. So a little bit about me and my company. We are an indigenous, veteran-owned adventure company, and we adventure in 3 modes. Those 3 modes are bikepacking, pack rafting, and a combination of the 2 that we call bike pack rafting. So what is bikepacking? Bikepacking is nothing more than backpacking, except you're adding a bike, a new element. The bicycle is now your tool to haul all your food, camping gear, tents, water, and this is an example. That's my partner and I, Nadine. We did a trip from our hometown, Kayenta, and we will actually do trips all over the place. We probably have like 8 or 9 routes, but we only have 1 approved one. But I'll get a little bit to that, why we only have 1 approved out of 8. So essentially, we're just riding to these picturesque locations in our area, to the highest mesas that we can find, just so we can camp and observe all the scenery around us is what we like to do. Just get out and adventure. So this is my rig, one of 4 rigs that I like to use. I have a fat tire bike, I have this bike, I have a cross bike, and then I also have another full suspension mountain bike. So it just depends on the terrain. I'll choose the bike based on where I'm going. And this time we went up to Hunts Mesa, and that's what my rig looks like. In the rear, under the seat, that's what's called a seat bag. And underneath that, or in that bag, I have my tent, my down pants, my down jackets, and some layers. In the frame bag, inside my frame, I carry most of my water. So you try to put all of your heaviest items near the center of gravity. And then the top 2 bags on top of my bag, I carry tools, pumps, CO2 cartridges, tire plugs, chain lube, multi-tool, and then on the gas tank part of my truck, or my bike, I carry all my snacks and food, and then on the feed bags, water, electronics, headlamps, things like that I use for nighttime. And then on my handlebar is my 2-person tent and also my camping pad. So that's how I roll, and I usually carry about 4 to 6 liters of water for trips, depending on where I'm going. Pack rafting, the other mode of transportation that we use to adventure is called pack raft. Anybody familiar with a pack raft? Okay, these are tiny little boats. Some of them can be the size of an Nalgene bottle to a little bit bigger, and they fold and stow so small that we can put these in our backpacks, or we can strap them to our handlebars, and we can ride. And on these boats are called bow zippers. You can unzip the boat itself and then stick all of your camping gear on the inside of it and zip it up, so you don't have to really carry anything. They're really versatile, and they're perfect for what we do. Bike pack rafting. That's a combination of both. We can put the rafts on our handlebars or carry them in a backpack, and when we get to a river or a crossing, we just air them up and we strap our bikes right to the boat and cross. And what that does is it allows us to explore more terrain. I have some friends that who just traversed or went around the whole Icelandic island, and they said it wouldn't have been possible without these boats, because they did like 36 or 37 river crossings in 4 days. Okay, and this is just a combination of just a simple trip. This is where we started in Hyde, Utah, and rode all the way down to the beginning of a little route that we call it feeds into the Colorado River. We paddled all the way down towards White Canyon, found a place to camp, set up, and then we left. And this was with a youth group that I took out. Okay, and my tour company. I also just started I didn't just start. In 2016, we started a tour company. And the reason why we started that is because I was new to Kayenta, and we were riding to all these picturesque places and all the beautiful places that we could see in Kayenta. And little did I know that most of the places we were riding to were tribal park territory. And so when we got to these places, we were actually being shunned by the Jeep tour operators and by everybody else, because I didn't know. We needed tour permits, we needed all kinds of permits to be in some of these areas. Even though I live on the land, some parts you still need to have permits. So that's how we started our tour company. We went up to Hunts Mesa, we camped, and then some Jeep tour operators were coming over to us and asking us what we were doing here, what's your deal. And so after further investigating, we realized that we are on tribal park territory and we really need to have permits. So we started to look into what it would cost to have to start our own company, just so we could have access to these places and we wouldn't be hassled. So it was feasible. My partner works at the hospital. I work as a school administrator, and we said, let's just pool our money together and we'll just buy a tour permit and then we'll operate that way. So when we decided to do that, we found out that the tribal park wasn't offering any more tour permits because they were loaded up on Jeep and horseback permits. So we had to step back and we had to come from a different angle. And the angle that we chose was ecotourism. We wanted, I got to know some of the council delegates and the local leaders in the Kayenta area, and we realized that, we tried to push on them that a lot of our Jeep tours and a lot of the tour companies should be pushing sustainable tourism and ecotourism. So we drafted up a lot of research and we approached them with that and said, it's not fair that we are trying to do something good here. We are trying to offer backcountry cultural experiences and teach a little bit about the history of the Navajo people with bikepacking. Because the great thing about bikepacking is you can stop and you can take your time and you can smell the sage, and it's easier to tell a story than driving by in a Jeep or a car when you've only got 2 minutes to cover an entire lifetime of stories. So that's how we were able to establish. In 2016 is when we first applied and we were granted an LLC. actually we were granted an L3C because we weren't in it for the profits. We were in it to educate our friends and look to expand to other things and how we could just teach our culture. And so after we got an L3C license and we started shopping around for banks and all these other things, we realized that banks in Arizona or anywhere else don't recognize an L3C. So we had to scrap that and start all over again. And we ended up, we were running out of time and we wanted to go with nonprofit, but I was so new to Kayenta that I didn't know enough people to create a board and all these other things to meet a deadline for the Navajo Nation. So we ended up just throwing our license in as an LLC instead. We dissolved L3C, started the LLC, and went from there. So ecotourism. Ecotourism has a lot of components. So we pulled out the ones that we felt were most important for us and ones that that are pretty standard across ecotourism. And those are, the first one, environmental impact. We don't cause any carbon emissions. All of our travel is human powered. We teach a lot of leave no trace principles. Before I was creating my own guide company, I also am a tour guide for Four Corners Guides out of Naples, Colorado. And they do a lot of pack rafting and bike packing and mountain climbing and other adventures. So being a part of that group, I was able to go to a lot of training in addition to wilderness first aid, WAFA, woofer, and all those. I also, swiftwater rescue. I also went to a lot of leave no trace classes and how to teach that. And so that's one of the principles of environmental impact. Minimizing is leave no trace. We educate on how to take care of the land. The second thing is education. There is a lot of history around the Kayenta area. And like, for example, the Spanish Trail runs right through our town. There's also a lot of recent history with uranium mining and a lot of artists coming out of there. So we try to teach all that. So that's the part of the education element of our program. And then cultural awareness. That again, a lot of Navajo creation stories are tied to geographical features. So in Kayenta alone, it's loaded with creation stories and all the rocks and the sandstone and mesas all around us. So it was easy to teach that. Economic benefit. This is something that we're trying to work on. This is our mission statement is to, on our website is to provide culturally relevant backcountry experiences, but another one is also to help build a bike pack community and then create infrastructure for ecotourism in Kayenta. And then last is community, how we work with our community. So I'll go over a few ways in how we do some of these things. So the first one, ecotourism and cultural awareness. Is anybody familiar with this rock feature there on the left? What's the name of it? Agatha Peak. Yeah. Agatha Peak, or the Navajo name was called Agaflan. Somehow it morphed over to Agatha Peak, and now it's also referred to as El Capitan. That's something that Kit Carson called it, so I don't know if I can call it El Capitan. So this rock formation is right outside of Kayenta, and it has tons of culturally relevant stories to it. So one of the stories that I'll tell today is about the sky. When our creators, or when our holy people were creating the world, they were playing with the sky, the distance of the sky and the atmosphere from to the earth. They had the sky too far, and at that time point, the earth was too cold, and people couldn't live. So they brought the sky closer, and the sky, it was too hot. Everything dried up. There was major drought. So when they finally realized that, the perfect distance from the earth to the sky, where everything would flourish, where plants would grow, where the environment, where the atmosphere was a perfect amount of oxygen for us to breathe, they assigned 7 pillars to hold the sky in place. And this is one of them here, Agatha Peak. And a lot of the elders, and even I do, they say that when we go and pray to this rock and pray to get blessings, that our prayers go straight to the holy people, because what its assignment is to connect the earth to the sky and keep it in place. So there's 7 other places like that on the reservation. This is one of them. So these stories like this are perfect for those camp nights when we're all done riding and we set up camp and we're cooking food and hanging out. So it's one of the things that I like to share. So there's so many other stories around Kayenta. Comb Ridge has its own story. When we get to the top of some of these mesas, we can see Bears Ears, Elk Ridge, Navajo Navajo Mountain, all these things around us. Each one of those things plays a significant role in my creation stories. So I'd love to share that on some of these bikepacking and packracking trips. Education. This is a tour that we did with a group of guys that were from the Radivist and some other publications and magazines and stuff. So this one here is overlooking King Valley, or what the locals call VCA, or what stands for the Canadian Corps. And this is where they blew apart bases to extract conotite, which eventually they got uranium from too. So this place has a lot of ties to the Cold War and Manhattan Project and other things. So this is a fun place to ride by. I like to share those stories, all the struggles with cancer those people had in this valley. But when we ride past some of these mesas, you can see a lot of drill marks because they drill really deep in the sandstone and stick dynamite and then blow them all apart. One of the stories I read one time was funny and it was sad at the same time, but they had got a 200-foot long by 16 feet diameter petrified tree from down the state. And it would have been a beautiful sight to see, but it was blown apart for the organic matter, which eventually became uranium. Community, how we relate to our community. And one is through, since my partner and I are employed, what we're trying to do is build a bike pack community on the reservation. It would be my dream someday to be able to ride from city to city through all these back roads on the Navajo Nation and run into people coming in the opposite direction, doing the same thing, bike touring, but off-road. And the way we're doing it is we're starting with our youth. All the proceeds that we get from people who book tours go to our youth program. Our youth program, we buy gear, bikes, sleeping gear, food, and we get stuff like that from the kids that go through our program. After they go through 3 or 4 trips, we let them have all the gear in hopes that they continue to bike pack and sustain that sport on their own. A part of that is teaching the kids about all of our cultural stories, about the Leave No Trace principles. And this summer, we're going to enroll our first group in wilderness first aid, CPR, and some other swiftwater rescue. I think one of them just turned 18, so I'm going to try to get them in that course. And again, our hope is that they become guides for our program or other Jeep programs, because of what we're trying to push is a small percentage of Jeep tours or those tour companies should be something sustainable. So our hopes is that this spills over into other companies and some of our youth participants get to work as tour guides too. Indigenous storytelling. Again, I like to write blogs, I like to write stories, I like to write about the history of the trips and locations we're going. And since I started doing that, a lot of my stories have appeared on REI, have been on a lot of the Continental Traveler, and a lot of other places. And I think one even came up on Yahoo one time. I was super proud. But that all started with a trip I did during the pandemic with my granddaughter. She's 6 years old, and she had always been bugging us to go bikepacking. So we finally found a route that she could do. We made sure that she trained, which meant she did a lot of laps in our neighborhood and pushed her bike up and down sandstone. And then the week before she was going to go back to school, she lived with in Chandler with her mom. We took her bikepacking, and I wrote a story about it. And the story that a lot of people liked, or the part of the story that people liked, was the ants. We were playing Uno. She took Uno cards with her. And so we were sitting there late at night. We had our headlamps on. We started playing Uno. And these huge carpenter ants started to come over our campground. And we were like, oh my gosh, she's like, let's just kill him, Che. That's what he called your grandpa in Navajo, Che. And I was like, no, we can't kill the ants. And the reason why we couldn't is I told them that in one of these creation stories, when our hero twins were traveling the world, they were going to see their father, the sun, so they could get power or get strength and knowledge on how to kill all the monsters that were tormenting the Navajo people. And so along the way, they were in a flat area, there was no place to hide, and the monsters started seeing them and they were closing in on them. So the twin heroes started to pray, and the ant came out of the ant hole, and they introduced themselves, and when they found out they were relatives, they took the heroes down in the ant holes, and the monsters passed without notice. So that's why I told my granddaughter, we can't just kill these ants just because they're inconveniencing our old maid and card game. So I wrote that in the story, and then as soon as I put it on my own blog, people started reaching out and they were buying them. So every time I put a blog out on my website, somebody wants to buy it, which I don't mind. I can use the extra money. So that's how it started. And so getting a little bit into how I try to convince our government that we need trails, which will eventually can lead to how we're using outdoor recreation as an outdoor economy. So I always start with health. Right now, there's not a lot of, I don't have to do a lot of trying to convince our government. They just have to realize the benefits of trails. So in 2016, when there wasn't any trails allowed, we would try to go to all these economic development summits, our local chapter house, because we wanted trails in our hometown. And a lot of times we have issues with land use and withdrawing land to do that stuff. And I'll get a little bit about that and the red tape that we run into. But and it's kind of funny, the morning that I was going to go to the chapter house to talk about building trails and how we could start a trail lights, I was cooking breakfast, making coffee, and then I like to play the news in the background on the TV. And I don't remember what news station it was, but the story right off the bat was, okay, the U.S. whatever health magazine has just released the top 10 healthiest cities in America. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So I was listening to it, and they had named Scottsdale, Phoenix, and Albuquerque, New Mexico as in the top 10 of the healthiest cities in America. And the reason why they were selected that is because trails. They have trail access in those communities, and those cities is why those were voted in the top 10. And so that's one thing that I always like to bring up because it really blew my mind, and it just happened to be on the morning that I was giving a presentation, so I know the good Lord watches it. So, and also the other thing is access to more opportunities. Is anybody familiar with a NICA racing? So NICA is the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. They are a group of high school racing students. It's like a sports team at a high school, but there is now cycling and mountain bike racing in this league, and the high schools are involved. When I got interested in being a cycling coach in 2014, I went to Sedona and I took the MBAA, the NICA coaching certification. And just out of curiosity, I went down to check out the state championships, and there was like 8 schools at the state championships in 2014. And last year when I went to go, there was 214 racing teams. And that's including Flag High, Holbrook High School, and a lot of others. And this is why I like to tell my leaders that we're doing the kids a disservice if we don't have a place for us to train. Because there's an outdoor adventure club at Monument Valley High School. And the poor guys, the guy has to keep having to get permission forms and book a bus, and they have to use their old club money to pay for gas to go hike in like Moab and Sedona and Flagstaff. And I tell my community leaders all the time, why can't we just do that here? What's wrong with us putting tents and sleeping bags in our backpacks and hiking to some of these mesas? And a lot of times it comes down to land use issues. So, more trail benefits. I'll try to push through these a little quick just so we can get to the economic development or the economic part. But just again, we have an issue with trying to keep teachers and doctors at the hospitals. I think if we had a network of trails and we had something to do, our community would be a little bit more attractive to people coming to work in our community for employment. The environment, as I was saying about the environment, the hardest part of withdrawing land is convincing elders and some of our grazing permit holders in our community, because they're the last signature. If I wanted to build a trail in Kayenta, I would go walk it down, get a GPS track of it, submit it to the chapter house, and from there I have to pay out of my own pocket the archaeological survey, a biological survey, and two more surveys that need to happen before I can submit it to the chapter house. Then they can say, okay, but the last signature on that form after I spent all my money is the grazing permit holder, and they can say no. And that's my government's told me that's just the way it is. So I always thought, okay, why don't you put them on the first signature then before I spend all my money? And so, and I understand where that's coming from. I understand my grandmother when she taught me that the Nebuchadnezzar, or land, is not meant for recreation, because a lot of our creation stories are told through the land. And I can understand what she means about we shouldn't be tearing it up, we shouldn't be doing this to the land, because our stories, who we are comes from the earth. So, and I understand that part too. So I always like to go to our government and say, why don't you just tell me where I can go build a trail? And then I'll know, and I won't waste my time. So, another trail benefit, property values. I mean, we don't technically own land and all that in Navajo Nation, but that does. I pulled these off of research that I've been doing. And last, economic development, or economic benefits of having trail. So there's, economic benefits. You can have anything from small scale to large scale. It just really depends on the community and how much they're behind it. So for small scale, like what we do, our tour company, we pay permit fees to chapter house. We pay backcountry fees to the tribal park. We pay camping fees. A lot of the people that I've been riding bikes with are well-known photographers. I don't know if anybody knows, but I had this idol photographer named Chris Picard for a long time. This guy's amazing, like 7 million followers on Instagram. He could put up a picture of the ugliest thing and get like 1 million likes. But anyway, he booked the tour with us November 5th and 6th. So I'm all like nerdy out about it. So we also pay for those photography fees, and I always encourage everybody that's coming through town, please shop at Bash's. They have all the hiking food you could imagine. I love it. I just try to help them. Our local community too, the grocery stores and stuff. I encourage them to gas up there. I encourage people to spend their money in our little town when they come bike packing. 99% of the times they do. So this is on the small scale. On a large scale now, if we wanted to really blow up our trails, so this is some data that I pulled from 2021. 2022's data won't be out until early next year. But so just taking a look at what Americans spend. Americans spend a lot of money. The number one thing Americans in the United States spend money on is healthcare. We spend more money on healthcare than anything else. Second are outpatient services too. Third, insurance and financial services. And fourth, we spend the most money on outdoor recreation. So this is a little old data, but we spent $887 billion in America on outdoor recreation alone. Okay, New Mexico, Governor Grisham. They were trying to think of ways to rebuild the economy, because a lot of mining stuff and a lot of resource extraction has kind of slowed down in New Mexico. So Governor Grisham made it using outdoor recreation as the one priority to help rebuild the economy. This is data that I pulled, and just last year, in 1 year alone, New Mexico generated $1.2 billion in revenue just from outdoor recreation alone, and we're able to create 33,500 jobs. And direct outdoor recreation. This is not indirect. Indirect would be if people came to your town to ride the local trail here. I mean, I like to ride the river trail all the time. And sometimes when my wife doesn't like to camp, we'll stay at a hotel. So indirect is we eat breakfast here or we spend money at the gas station. So indirect costs to outdoor recreation and those jobs. So just direct jobs that were able to create 33,500 last year. Old mining towns. I talk a lot about old mining towns and how they have dried up, and a lot of people left. Kayenta is a prime example of that. I can tell with the high school population reducing more than 50%. So I pulled all of these old mining towns and that started to use outdoor recreation, and they are booming. These towns here, East Burke, Vermont, built a whole bunch of trails, and now they are seeing a huge increase in revenue in that town alone. Another big one I like to go ride at, Fruita. Fruita was an old mining town too that just looked terrible. And last year they've added 139 miles of single track, and they've also increased their annual revenue by $14.5 million. Durango, Colorado, that's a huge town. I don't have to put any statistics up there. You've all driven through there. You know it's blowing up to outdoor recreation. So just two prime examples that I like to show because it's real similar to the Kayenta terrain is Moab and Sedona. So Moab last year used to be the uranium capital of the world. Now they've designated 2 national parks. They put up 1 state park. They've got world-class mountain bike riding, Jeep, ATV, and all-terrain stuff. They've generated just in that town outdoor recreation $856 million. And 70% of that, or 70% of that revenue comes from outdoor recreation. Sedona, similar story. Their revenue for outdoor recreation was $1.4 million. And the reason why I bring up these two is because the terrain is real similar with all the sandstone in Kayenta. And also, if I were to drive from Moab to Sedona, Kayenta is right smack in the middle of it, with tons and tons of sandstone and similar terrain. We have 3 trail systems in Kayenta. They're not fully legitimized yet. I'm still working on using the grazing permit holders, but I'm hoping that we can string those 3 trail systems together to make a 2-day excursion where we can let people come to town and stay at one of our local hotels, eat at restaurants, and ride all 3 trail systems, and book a tour with us. So the possibilities are endless. Arizona alone last year, outdoor recreation generated $21.8 billion. $1.4 billion went to state and local tax. 201,000 direct jobs, and more indirect, I don't know. But mining revenue last year in Arizona was $11.5 billion. Outdoor recreation doubled mining and mineral extraction. And ways to help the community, obviously through employment. But my town in Kayenta has recently started what's called the Tri-City Initiative. They wanted to rebuild our economy using, I don't know if you're familiar with chapters, but if you take a look at the Navajo Nation, it's divided up into chapters. Just like the United States would be divided up in states, we have chapters on the reservation that serve the same purpose, local governments. In Kayenta area, we have 3 cities that are inside of our chapter, which is Benahotso, Chilchimbato, and Kayenta. And so when my council delegate brought us all together, he said, we really would like to find a way to rebuild our economy after the mine left, after they closed Black Mesa Mine. So we designated this new project called the Tri-City Initiative. And what that is they want to, or we want to make Kayenta our business hub for eateries, motels, and things like that. And Benahotso next door, our outdoor recreation site where we can have offered tours and unlimited, hopefully not Jeep things, not yet anyway. And then Chilchimbato would be like our mini Santa Fe. where people can stay and do both, go enjoy a nice hike or a nice bike ride, then head back to the hotel in Kayenta, and then go to Chimbote where they can look at jewelry exhibitions where the world's largest rugs are housed here. They're creating a little center for it to show it and tell the story behind it. It's a beautiful story about that rug. So knowing that, I created a bike path route. It's 99.7 miles, starts in Kayenta. We ride out to Dedahotsa, camp on Cone Ridge, drop down in there the next day, and then get to the gas station. That's my favorite thing about bike packing is I burn calories. I can eat all kinds of gas station food. And then we ride dirt roads over to Chimbote, and then we have a camp spot there that the chapter house gave us. So we can camp there, load up on water and food, and then head back into Kayenta. So I like to call this the Tri-City route. We haven't really published it yet, but we've already put it together. We have all the logistics planned. In 2023, this will be a new part of our bike packing routes, the ones we'll offer. I just kind of want to wait a little bit until Chimbote puts together the cultural center. So other opportunities to capitalize off of. I pulled this yesterday. This is off of the outdoor industry website where there's tons and tons of research about outdoor industry. Breaks down all kinds of ways. How many 16-year-olds are doing this? How many 14-year-olds like hiking more than, there's so much data. So the stuff that I found was just new initiatives and growth in different areas. And the two biggest areas are hiking and biking for outdoor recreation. Those are growing. A lot of this stuff kind of slowed down during the pandemic that involved vehicles and people, but those are the ones that are continuing to grow with new audiences. So I like to, successful models. So I attended a race recently in Hard Rock, Arizona called Res Duro. Is anybody familiar with enduro type bike riding? Where they're jumping up big hills and doing crazy. I wasn't doing that until that stuff. But they finally have a race now called Res Duro in this town, and it was amazing. They organized this so well, and so that just reminded me that there is opportunity for each one of our reservation towns to do something in outdoor recreation to make that town a little bit better. And these guys, it's funny, since we've been battling all the red tape with our tribe about land use issues, that when I go to this event, or when I went to this event, they call me the OG, because they were like, you're the original guy, or the OG's the original gangster. Because you helped with these barriers. You cut this red tape so we're allowed to do this stuff now. So I was kind of, my work is showing a little bit, all the battling that we had to do. Changing lives. Bikepacking and bicycles changing lives. I'll leave this because I want high school teams to have cycling, or I want cycling to be in every one of our reservation high schools. We have a lot of really good athletes and excellent cross-country runners and state champions of the Navajo Nation. Imagine if we were to add the bicycle element. Fort Lewis is already, looking at kids. They have a cycling team, and I know that they're actively recruiting kids in our community. So our first youth program participants were three siblings, 2 sisters and a male. We took them out bike riding, and we taught them how to pack gear, ride bikes, and load up stuff. And we did little jaunts outside of our little town, and 5 miles out. And then we eventually ended with 60, 70-mile routes. But they got so hooked on bikes that it's in their blood now. As a matter of fact, they're up in Virgin, Utah right now at a big Red Bull event. But we have to lend bikes. They have a single mom, so we were able to make connections with friends who donated bikes and stuff to them, and they have flourished now. The first year that they started cycling, they went to the Arizona State Mountain Biking Championships and took second and third after only 7 months of riding. This is them in Whistler, Canada. They went up there and they raced in second and fourth. And then at the Res Duro, the girl on the podium in first place won a frame, which Specialized eventually turned into a sponsorship and a real bike. And these kids are all brand ambassadors. They all are sponsored riders, and this is only their second year. So just recently, we took a group out from Durango Devo. So our youth program isn't just Native kids. We take everybody that's interested in is a youth. So if you want to join us, I'll have to check your driver's licenses, make sure you're under 18. Otherwise, you pay the permit fee. Okay. I wanted to try to stay on time, so thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions?